Hello and welcome to the first of two videos focusing on how to create this wire woven drop bead pendant. In this video I'll show you how to set the bead and weave the frame. I love gemstones and I have a particular weakness for buying these top drilled drops. But then I wonder how I'm going to put them into my jewellery. This project shows just one method. So for this project I have my top drilled bead. This is a faceted carnelian and it measures about 14 by 9mm. Also want some 1mm diameter wire and 0.25mm diameter wire. I chose the 0.25 to fit through the bead twice. And then for the tools you need flat nose or chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, 6-step pliers if you've got them, wire cutters, nylon jaw pliers, an awl and some liver of sulphur to patina at the end. For this pendant I need 3 pieces of the 1mm wire, about 25 to 30 centimetres long. I've got 30 centimetres here but I expect to be trimming off quite a bit at the end. So I'm starting with one of the wires and I'll set the other two aside for now. I just want to bend it to find the approximate centre point. Then I'm going to pop that into my 6-step pliers on about the 3rd step and create a full loop. Now I want that loop big enough to sit over the bead where the holes are. And then I'm just going to place the loop in my flat nose pliers and gently bend the ends of the wire upwards. So that loop's now sitting at 90 degrees. I'm then going to take a length of the 0.25 wire and I want this to be a fairly long length because I'm going to continue the weave with it. I think I'm going to use about 2.5 to 3 metres in total, but it's best to cut a length that you're comfortable using and then add in when you need to. Now leaving a tail on the wire of 20 centimetres or so, I'm just going to wind it around on that loop to anchor it. And then I'll continue that coil on the loop to get halfway round the circle of the loop. So once we've got our half coiled loop, we're ready to add the bead. So I'm just going to thread it onto the longest part of that wire. And that wire's coming from underneath, so I'm going to make sure when it goes across it'll be coming upwards. And then the other wire I'll thread through the bead in the opposite direction. And that wire is also coming downwards, so the two wires basically cross in the middle of the bead. Then I need to gently tighten these wires up. Just make sure there aren't any kinks in them. And once it's in position you can pull those wires tight. And then continue coiling on both sides of the bead to hold it in position and finish the coil around the whole of that loop. Now one thing you can do to help support the bead is a tiny bit of corset weave on the back part of that loop. So instead of continuing the coil, once you've gotten just clear of the bead, take the wire over to the opposite side, through the centre between the two wires, around the wire on the opposite side, and then back between the wires and over to the side you started. And just continue that weave until the wires meet. And that's got our bead secured into position, ready to weave into the frame. So I'm now going to take the other two 1mm wires and a piece of the 0.25 about 40 or 50 centimetres long. And I'll wrap that 3 times around one of the wires. This is to anchor the wire but also form part of the weave. Then I'll take the second 1mm wire and wrap that 0.25 3 times around both wires. I'm then just going to wrap the first wire 3 times. And then both wires 3 times. And I'll continue this 3-3 weave for about 5 centimetres. Then I'm going to bend the wires so that weaves on the side of the curve. And then twist the weave at the sides. I'm twisting it so that the wire that just has the double wraps on it is on the outside. I'll then carry on forming that teardrop shape and curving the wires up at the top of the weave so that they're all running straight up. I'll make sure I'm happy with the shape, and then the wire with the bead will fit in the centre. Again, I can just check that I like how that looks, and then I'm ready to start weaving all the wires together. Now I'm using the weaving wire that I added the bead with, and at the moment it's coming up through the centre of all of those wires. So I'm going to take it over 2 wires towards the right, and then back round 1 wire, up between the 2 wires that I've just wrapped over, then over the outermost wires, around the back of the outside wire, up between the 2 wires, and over the outside wire. I'm then going to take it back up and over the outside 2 wires again. This is so I can make the turn. Take the wire back up between those 2 outside wires, and then I can start weaving back over to the other side. This is what I call the tapestry weave, and I'm going to be using it to weave all the way up to the bail. Now it's quite difficult to show you the weave at this stage whilst the frame wires aren't held very tightly together, so if I switch to a little bit further up I can then show you the weave in detail. So I've made a few lines of the weave, but I'm basically at the same point I was when I left off at the start, with my weaving wire coming up between the 2 outside wires on the right, and I'm about to start weaving towards the left. And all I'm going to do is take that weaving wire over 2 wires, back under 1, and then through the 2 wires that I've woven over, and then over the next 2 wires, back under 1, over the next 2 wires, and back under 1, and then over those last 2 wires and under 1 between them. Then I'll take a full wrap over just that outside wire, go up between the 2nd and 3rd wires in, and wrap over the last 2 wires again, then up between them so I can start weaving back to the right, over 2 wires and under 1 wire. And I'm just going to continue in this way until I've got about 3/4 centimetre of weaving. If it's a little bit difficult to see on this video, I show the tapestry weave in my wraparound weaves video in 0.4mm weaving wire, so that might just be a little bit easier to see. Now I want to reduce the number of wires I'm weaving on, but before I do that I want to shape the bottom of the frame. My nylon jaw pliers are a little bit large, so I've just wrapped some masking tape around my flat nose pliers. I'm just going to twist that weave at the bottom so it's lying flat. I'm then going to make sure those top wires are nice and flat and settle the weave that I've just done. And then I'm gently just going to bend the outer wires out of the way. I'll then continue the tapestry weave up on just the 4 wires for another 3/4 centimetre. We now have the base of the pendant and are at the point of creating the bail. There are a variety of options for this. We have 4 wires to play with, so could weave with all 4 of them, perhaps continuing the tapestry weave, or we could weave a bail with just 2, either the inner or outer wires, and pull the others forward to help with the embellishment. But that I'm going to leave for part 2 of this tutorial. Thanks for watching so far. Don't forget to come back for part 2 to see how I create the bail and finish the pendant. See you soon!